As you may know, Ann Wigmore popularized the idea of growing wheatgrass indoors. In her books, she referenced research during the 1930s and 1940s by the medical community using whole food wheatgrass powder supplied by Dr. Charles Schnabel, the father of wheatgrass. She used this research as a scientific basis for recommending the use of wheatgrass in the diet. I talked with Ann Wigmore. Although I tried to explain, she never seemed to understand that the scientific research she believed in so strongly was with whole food wheatgrass powder that had been grown outdoors slowly in cold weather. I wanted her to know that the wheatgrass used in the research that she quoted was not juice and was not grown for 7 to 10 days in crowded, warm conditions indoors. It was whole food wheatgrass powder that had been grown outdoors in deep soil through the often freezing temperatures in northeastern Kansas. The seeds were not spaced right next to each other as she had taught, but rather they were planted as nature intended, which is an average about 1 inch apart. When hard red winter wheat seed is planted in October and November in its appropriate climate, the cool air of fall and the still warm soil from the summer induces the plant to grow roots down a foot deep in the soil, while growing only about 1 inch or 2 of leaf. These short leaves do not grow very much during the winter, but the roots are busy preparing for the early spring, whose research Ann Wigmore referenced in her books. Grew his wheatgrass and other cereal grasses naturally in the glacial soils of Kansas, which are only found in the northeast corner of the state. His research and the research of other scientists proved that the plants reach their maximum nutritional value at the once-a-year jointing stage after a period of slow growth in cold temperatures. At Pines, we grew our certified organic wheatgrass in accordance with Dr. Schnabel's discoveries. Although it takes nearly 200 days to reach the nutritional levels that Dr. Schnabel and other scientists discovered in their research, the cold temperatures of winter and early spring caused the plant to grow very slowly. In fact, wheatgrass grown through the winter as nature intended is still shorter when harvested than wheatgrass forced to grow rapidly in 7 to 10 days in extremely crowded warm conditions. The leaves of true wheatgrass are thick, dark green and fleshy, rather than thin and spindly, as is the case with wheatgrass grown quickly indoors or even outdoors in warm weather and crowded conditions. Actually, when we started Pines in 1976, we did not know about Ann Wigmore, and we had not yet met her. But just like her, we were inspired about wheatgrass because of the scientific research and the research from the medical community using Dr. Schnabel's whole food wheatgrass powder and tablets grown in the glacial soils of northeastern Kansas. I had the privilege of working for Dr. Schnabel's company several decades after he retired, when the company was in the process of closing down in the 1970s. I reviewed the testimonials that Dr. Schnabel and his successors had received on his dehydrated whole leaf wheatgrass powder and tablets. Since starting Pines in 1976, we have received hundreds of similar testimonials. When people grow wheatgrass for personal use, they are free to make claims about using wheatgrass for the treatment of various diseases. But as a responsible company, we would never do that, even if it were legal to do so. Yet, even if there were not a prohibition against making healing claims for non-pharmaceutical products, we would consider it very irresponsible to claim that simply adding wheatgrass to the diet will create healing miracles. Even Ann Wigmore never made such claims. Her living food program involved much more than wheatgrass. She recommended a diet of 100% raw food from either fresh or dehydrated raw foods. The dehydrated raw foods need to be dehydrated, she said, at low temperatures after being harvested during their peak season when they are ripe or are at their peak nutritional value. Although we received many testimonials from people who made no change in their diet except adding Pines wheatgrass, most people who have spectacular results with either rapidly grown wheatgrass or true wheatgrass like we grow do more than simply add wheatgrass to their diet. If they have those kinds of spectacular results, it's usually related not just to wheatgrass, but to major changes in their diet, to their lifestyle, and to their mental attitude. Personally, except for her methods of growing wheatgrass, I agree with Ann Wigmore's teachings and support eating abundant qualities of fresh living food and or dried living foods, which is harvested at the peak nutritional value, grown in its appropriate climate, and dried at low temperatures to protect enzymes, as is the case with Pines wheatgrass. Because some people believe growing wheatgrass rapidly indoors is better than growing it as nature intended, a few decades back, our company tried growing wheatgrass in our greenhouse for those people. Since at Pines we have a laboratory and since we follow all government testing regulations, we performed the usual kinds of tests on the greenhouse grown wheatgrass that we do on our naturally grown wheatgrass. We tested for bacteria, yeast, mold, and pathogens. Although we never found any pathogens, no matter what we did, the mold and bacteria levels were far too high with growing wheatgrass rapidly indoors for our standards. So we quit trying to grow it that way and stayed with our true wheatgrass grown through the winter and harvested in the spring as nature intended. Most of the companies that rapidly grow wheatgrass commercially in crowded, warm conditions, they do not test their products. At Pines, we test every batch for mold, bacteria, yeast, heavy metals, gluten, and pathogens. Pines wheatgrass not only passes all the tests regarding heavy metals, it also meets the standards for gluten-free, yeast-free, and mold-free. It also has the lowest levels of bacteria of any green superfood and has never tested positive for any pathogens in all of our 37 years. In conclusion, don't get me wrong, all wheatgrass is good, all green food is good. But when it is grown as nature intended in the climate and the soils that are natural to the plant, and when it is harvested at the once-a-year time that it reaches its peak nutritional value in that perfect climate, it provides much more nutrition using the high standards that Dr. Schnabel established more than 75 years ago.